Hi, in this video, I'm going to cover one way to look for a journal to publish your research in. I'm going to cover Cabell's directory of publishing opportunities in psychology. And I'll share my screen. So you want to start here. If you're a fielding student at My Fielding, and go into the library. Log into the library and go to databases. You can either search for it in the search bar or just scan down. I'll search for it because the words will be bigger on the screen. So it's called Cabell's Directory of Publishing Opportunities. We have the version Psychology and Psychiatry, and click in this way. When you join from within the university, it logs you in because the university pays for it. And we need to keep using it because if we don't use it, the university will get rid of it. And it is really useful. So some of the reasons you'd want to use it. It can be hard to find statistics on a journal's rejection rate, also known as acceptance rate. Real briefly, the acceptance rate and rejection rate. So out of 100% of the articles any journal receives, what percentage of them do they accept? That's the acceptance rate. Which ones do they therefore reject? That's the rejection rate. So if a journal has a 30% acceptance rate, it has a 70% rejection rate. You want to know that. Journals, they have high rejection rates. That's just the way it is. Sometimes I hear people say that there's so many journals, it's easy to get published. I'm sorry, but I'm going to call BS on that one. It's never been easy to get published. Sure, you can self-publish anything, but we're talking about a peer-reviewed publication that will get you respected as a legitimate expert in your field. I can publish anything on my own website. That's not this. This is peer-reviewed, established, indexed scientific publishing, which is far more prestigious than self-publishing or those other things that I mentioned. They used to call them vanity presses for books because you can pay people to publish your book on anything, your children's book, your rants about politics, anything, or your legitimate thoughts that you just didn't get published through a peer review process. So that's Cabell's. So they have something called Journalytics, which we're looking at here. Actually, I'll show you the main landing page first. So here we go. So they're just going to go through here if you click on these things and find out all the different statistics that they share. So I can blow this up and just show things, all the data that are on here. Like, okay, this journal is called Behavioral Ecology. It's published by Oxford University Press. I'll tell you about altmetric data in detail in another presentation, but this is an attention score, the median attention score for the articles published in Behavioral Ecology. There's different metrics such as difficulty of acceptance. Cabell's has its own classification index. You can click here to read about that. I'm going to show you a journal. This is just what they had featured on their homepage, but I'm going to next go into searching for a journal. I'm going to search for the term media psychology. In quotes means that I wanted to look for that term in that order. And so it's only going to come up with two that have that term, media psychology, in that order. Hogreaves' Journal of Media Psych and Taylor and Francis's Media Psychology. I'm just going to look at the stats here. The altmetrics on Journal of Media Psych is 2142 on Media Psych. Media Psych is published twice a month. Journal of Media Psych quarterly. I'm going to click through here and it opens up the whole set of stats here. So it's a psychology journal, although if you look at the first edition of the Oxford Handbook of Media Psych, which I edited, two fielding students did a content analysis of the first 8 years of the journal of Media Psych and found that by far most of the PhDs of the first authors were in communication, which is fine because I think that Media Psych is half communication. Well, it's communication and psychology and other related fields, but mostly communication and psychology, who do empirical social science research in what I call media psychology. So it has all kinds of info. It is a psychology journal. It's an academic journal. It's published bi-monthly. It started in 1999. This here, it says about the journal. That's also called aims and scope, because it's telling you what is the scope of what they publish. This is a big deal in terms of, does your research match the scope of the journal, including what they publish. So do they publish humanities style papers on media psych? Do they publish empirical research, like many, I guess is true, psychology journals do? Do they have methods that they prefer? Do they publish qualitative research? It's pretty much the default that they will, psychology journals and social science research media journals, like in communication, will publish quantitative research for sure. Whether or not they'll publish qualitative, it's really nice if they put it in their aims and scope. You can also go to the journal's webpage itself, or go inside the library and just search for the word qualitative. That's one way to find out if some of the work that they have published is indeed qualitative. If they don't publish it, they don't publish it. So you want to know before you submit something there. You don't want to waste your time and theirs. So media psych is highly selective, 8% acceptance rate. Don't feel bad. When I look at that, I think, I'm never going to publish anything there. I think I do have one article published there, but that's because I didn't see this in advance. Like, to me, that makes me go, dear God. But you never know, like, it's complicated. And it's true, though, that if you think it's hard to publish in a certain journal, then you want to save probably what you think of as the strongest paper in that journal's definition that you have to submit there. That's only part of the story, but that's I think a big part of it. So about 2 to 3 months in the time to review. So when you submit something and it tells you submit it, somewhere in here it says submit it on the web. Almost everything would be submitted on the web nowadays. Back in the day when I was young, we printed those things out and we mailed them in the mail. We made 3 copies. But that is not how it is anymore. Thank goodness. And so it tells you things like they publish empirical research. When you're collecting data, yes, that is what they publish. So if you were to send an essay to them, they may or may not be open to that. You have to read the whole aims and scopes to find out. In general, in psychology journals, new data, empirical research is highly sought after. It's going to be preferred. I'm going to search for the journal I edit. Psychology of Popular Media is a journal I edit. I will tell you that one thing about this to know is that when I came on board, one of my visions for the journal is that I wanted to change the name. And for years before that, since 2011 to the time I took over, and it's like, I always forget, it's like 2019 or so. Everything's a blur since then. I changed to Psychology of Popular Media. It used to have the word culture on the end. That's a whole story in and of itself. Basically, I noticed that my peers were having trouble remembering what the name was, even if we were working on a project together and they'd say, where do you want to publish this? They would often mention Psychology of Popular Media Culture, but they would not get the name right, or they would stumble on it. And I think that's a bad marketing problem. You don't want people to not be quite sure what the name is. And culture is part of media. I don't think you have to say it in the title. So it got submitted to an APA committee, which handles things about the names of their journals. Went through a whole process. It wasn't just me. I was not involved in the decision since it was my request as the journal editor, and it changed. So for what this means here is then if you put this in, oh, interesting, it brought up the same one. Normally you have to use both names, but it's putting them together. Did I ask them to do that? I forget so many things. There are some databases that I directly ask them to put those two together. So goes through the same thing. It is in psychology. It's an academic journal. It's published quarterly. The launch date was 2011, like I said. I wrote these aims and scopes. That's a fun thing for me to see when I see them online. When they offered me the job of the editor of the journal, I will never forget, and I will carve this on a plaque somewhere. They said, you have complete editorial control, which made me feel super power hungry. Not really, but it did make me think I have a chance to shape my field here. There are major limits to my editorial control. And in fact, because that's only right, but it is true that as the editor, I do have some control of what gets published there. So I did write the aims and scope. So I'll give you just one example. I took care to say quantitative and qualitative empirical research in this aim and scope because I wanted authors to know that I'm serious about both of them being equally valid, great methods, and that I'm looking to publish both of those types of research. Psychology has traditionally been quantitative, and when I was in grad school, we covered 0 qualitative research methods. We also did not cover content analysis because my PhD is in social psychology, and that was not a method that was considered viable in social psychology in general at the time. But I think that both of those methods, qualitative, the entire field, and just the process of the method of content analysis are very important to media psych. So I do want to publish them. So you want to look there, you want to see if it aligns with that thing that you are trying to publish. For example, many journals do not necessarily publish literature reviews. If they do, they would have to be sort of groundbreaking and or by the people, some people who are known as some of the top experts in the field. It would need to be very high quality. In other words, you can't simply review the literature. It would have to be an excellent literature review by people who know what they're really know what they're doing by their expertise. There's an article by Baumeister and Leary about writing literature reviews, and it is written at the level of a very high quality. They're directing you to write that kind of very high quality lit review, which might actually be publishable. But a run-of-the-mill literature review, just an average literature review, is not generally going to be able to compete with new data. That's just the facts of life. But some journals do publish them. These are my viewpoints. This is based on my experience. Some people will say in their aims and scopes that they do specifically publish literature reviews. There are some journals that actively want literature reviews, and there's reasons for publishing them. But if you look at what has been published in there, you will see that a lot of the top journals, they're not full of lit reviews, let's say. They're full of empirical articles. It tells you things in Cabell's like what type of peer review you're blind to. If you're the author, you're blind to who's reviewing you. And if you're a reviewer, you're blind to who the authors are. That's the double blind. The editor is not blind. I mean, yeah, the editor is not blind. Somebody has to know, somebody in the back office, so to speak, has to know who wrote this paper, right? So usually double blind is seen as the standard, the gold standard in psychology. That's the way I was taught. But it's not entirely blind. And the editor does make the ultimate decisions. In the case of psychology of popular media, I have associate editors. One of them is our professor, Patrick Sweeney. And so they are the handling editor on a number of the different ones, on a number of papers. And my policy at the journal is I don't second guess any of their judgments. Why would I? So in that case, it's me making the choice, but I am making the choice that they make because they're experts. It says no plagiarism screen. There is actually a plagiarism screen now. I'm going to make myself a note to write the journal about that and however they interface with Cabell's. So we do have a plagiarism screen in place now. We have at least 2 external reviewers, yep, and 1 internal reviewer, if you're going to say that that's the associate editor, for instance. Time to publication is about 3 to 6 months. Let's see. Oh, so there's a compare button. You could compare multiple journals. So why you would really want Cabell's directory, one of the reasons is to find new journals that you didn't know about. One is to compare. It's like on Amazon, right? You can click compare these socks to these socks to these socks. What do they cost? What are they made of? You know, all that stuff. Same thing here. I'm going to do a search for personality psychology. Oops, my dog just came home. She's excited. Scout, would you like to hear about some journals in personality psychology? So I did not put quotes, if you notice. And so it does give you a very broad answer to your question. If you just put in a term like, I don't know why we have this Mexican journal about comportamentalia. Sorry, my Spanish is not good enough to know what that means. It looks like this is a journal of Hungarian ethnography. Anyway, so advances in mental health. It's not that that is specifically a personality journal. So I'm going to hit psychology. You could unclick some of those different ones to make it a little, I was hoping it was a little bit more pointed. I'm not sure that it was. Here's an example of a social psych journal. My mentor is still the editor of this one, aggressive behavior. So let me then put in personality psychology in quotes, and then it'll get just, you know, like I did with media psych journals that have those two words in that order. So here's social and personality psychology compass. I've published an article in there. I will tell you a little bit about the journal. There are a number of journals published by Wiley under the name Compass, and this is really cool. You might wonder, oh my gosh, it has a 98% acceptance rate. All right, I'm going to send all my articles there. Well, it's actually not like that. Let me tell you the background story from this. So I didn't know about this journal, but I had an article that I loved that was published in that journal, and I decided to look it up. Not my article, someone else's. I decided to look that up and read about it. What is up with this journal? And I learned that what they do is they do a lot of inviting people to write specific articles. So if I'm inviting you, I'm saying as long as it's fine, you know, it meets the standards of the field. And if you hadn't published a bunch of stuff where I know you can write and all that, I wouldn't invite you. Then, you know, you're going to get accepted. So that's why it's 98%. You know, sometimes people get sick or who knows, whatever, but 98% of the time they're following through. It said that if you have the journal information said, if you have a topic that you think would fit social and personality psychology compass, you submit it to one of the sub editors. So it's divided into sections. Many journals actually are. So I don't remember what the name of the section was, but let's say it was attitudes or who knows. So you pitch, basically, it's like pitching an idea to that editor, and they decide whether you are the person to write this and it is something they want to have published in the journal. So I was getting ready to write a book called Finding Truth in Fiction with Cynthia Binney, which was published right at the beginning of the pandemic, and by Oxford University Press, not by Wiley. But I believed that writing a chapter-length version of what is essentially the argument of that book would be good practice for me. Just to get me revved up to write the book, let me think about this topic in a global way. So I wrote the initial draft, and then two, at that time, current grad students, Cynthia Binney and Kristen Hopper-Lozinski, they added some sections, and then they edited to help me edit the entire document. So all three of us were authors. And that's one of the favorite papers that I have ever written to me, because it has some essential content that I wanted to get published, I wanted to put out there. And like I said, I thought it'd be very good for me as a writer to just take a stab at making my argument for the book inside one chapter. The journal itself says that one of the uses of the Compass journals, and there are others, you know, there's sociology Compass, there's different Compass journals, is that, let's say you're a social psychologist like I am, but it's about research that's not in your specific field. Like I know something about persuasion, but I'm not primarily a persuasion researcher. I might want to know what's the latest on persuasion. And so the journal is dedicated to publishing, as it says here. I can read in the aims and scope: original peer-reviewed surveys of current research and theory. So I could look through that journal all the time to just say, what's going on with attitude change? What's going on with research on the self, or something specific about the self in a social psych journal. So it's a really good journal for that. And I really feel very positive about the whole idea of those compass journals. So that is something to keep in mind. It's been around, this one, since 2007. So you want to look in there, you want to find out the stats, you want to read the aims and scope, and anytime you can click on, let's see, where am I clicking here? I need to get the link. Here we go. Oh, it's not actually an active link here. So anyway, I could copy it and I could then go to the home page. Whoopsie. Go to the home page for Wiley in that case. So the only other thing, I've closed the window now, so I won't get back into it, but I'll just say the only other thing that I would point out to you is that on the top of the Cabell's directory page, it says Journalytics on the menu, and it says predatory publishers or something to that effect. They used to call it black list and white list, and then they were told that that is a racist term, so they changed it to Journalytics and predatory. And so what is predatory publishing? I'll tell you what's predatory real quick, and then I'll tell you what you can use Cabell's for. So this didn't used to exist like this, but journals now have been popping up since the dawn of the digital age, which try to get potential authors to pay to be published in a journal. And the journal is really not a legitimate academic journal. It's actually predatory. It's just trying to get, scholars who want to publish, get them the opportunity, but essentially that is not going to count for anything in the academic world if it's a predatory journal. There's another talk I have about what's a peer-reviewed journal. Your paper has to be evaluated on its own merits and deemed by some peers to be of high enough quality to be published in a journal. That's a peer-reviewed journal. Predatory journals are journals that do not actually do that. They are not concerned about how good the content is. They only want your money. But if it's not a legitimate academic journal and anyone knows that, then you're not going to, you can't put it on your CV, your vita, because it would be more embarrassing than anything and it wouldn't count. So if we had a different license for Cabell's, we could click on predatory journals. We don't have that license because it costs more, but here's a backdoor way to do it. The two lists, remember, predatory and Journalytics, is that the other one? Yeah. If you find a journal on Journalytics, that means it's not predatory. So if it is on there, it's okay. It's legit, it's not predatory. Some journals do have fees for authors. I personally am utterly against that from a ethics perspective. Who is saying that professors are rich and can pay those fees, and people who have have grants, have sources of money, they can pay for them, so therefore they're more likely to get published than someone who can't pay for it. And that is out and out socioeconomic prejudice right there. It's the rich get richer, absolutely. So I'm utterly against that. They don't pay us to publish our work in journals, by the way. People ask me that all the time. My mom, my aunts, whoever, they will just say, hey, oh, you got something published, did they pay you? And I'll be like, no, but they don't pay me. They don't pay us, scholars. But that's a whole debate in the field. Like we have taken it for granted and we keep publishing there because we have to be published to get a job and to keep our jobs. And the extent of that varies by what job, but we can't not publish, right? So we have to have outlets. And so even though they don't pay us, we submit our work to them. And basically it's because they can get away with it, essentially. Now, do I get compensated for publishing research? Yes, because I couldn't have landed any of my, I've had 2 academic jobs, 2 institutions, and I couldn't have landed either of those without publishing for sure. My first job had 180 applicants. And my second job, the one here at Fielding, they were specifically searching for a publishing researcher who could publish with students. So absolutely, I could not have gotten this job without having publications. I wouldn't be the editor of a journal without publications. So do I get paid? Yes, I get paid my salary. I get the ability to have a job. I get invited to do a lot of things based on my publications. Does the journal send me a check? No, not for the articles I submit. APA does send me a small check because I'm the editor of the journal, but for that's a stipend, just an honorarium. But do I get money for putting my articles in there? Not directly from the publishing outlet, but indirectly because the university where I work pays me, and they wouldn't if I didn't have those publications. That's a hard, cold reality. So that's, I mean, I'm not sad about it. I love research and I love publishing. It's difficult, but it's not impossible. So I'll share lots of tips with you in other videos, but you just need to know some of those things. So you do not want to fall for a predatory journal. We're going to have Abby Ray from the library, the director of the library, come in and share some various tactics with us. I have a few times been solicited, like, hey, submit your paper to this journal, just getting an email. And I will, if I don't know, ask Abby to try to help me find out if that is a legitimate publication or not. Now, if it's in Journalytics, it is a legitimate publication. Also, if it is the publication of some scholarly organization or group, like if it is published by APA, it is not a predatory journal. Usually if you know it's legit, it's legit if it's published by a society, like a journal of, let's see, it's ICAM, Journal of Child and Adolescent, I'm sorry, I'm butchering the name, but it's a ICA organization. There's sometimes like divisions or interest groups within the field, like APA has division 46, ICA has different divisions. And if they publish a journal, then it's a legit academic journal. So if it's associated with something legitimate, if it is in Journalytics, or let's see, it's slipping my mind, there's a third one that's obvious, indexing. If it is indexed by the popular library indexing services. So what I mean by that is like psychology articles, ProQuest, ERIC, these different databases. So if you go into our databases and you find it indexed in there, indexed is, it is listed, that journal is listed in there, then it's legit. So unfortunately, a problem that didn't used to exist now exists. There didn't used to be pay journals that were legitimate. We call them pay journals, but journal asking for a fee. Some of them are legit nowadays. Some of them aren't. And so it's another thing just to look out for. And you really don't want to publish in those, because it won't, not only will it not look good, it will look bad. And I don't want you to put yourself in that situation. So we want to find the right journal, a good journal, a journal that has stats that you're comfortable with, and then you'll be submitting your work to them. All right, that's all I have to say on that topic. Bye.